Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the More Than You See podcast, where I have meaningful conversations with creatives about their mental health journeys. Please note, I am not a licensed practitioner or therapist, but an actor and a filmmaker who is deeply interested in sharing my own struggles and exploring the mental health of others. My hope is that these conversations bring you some joy, some personal understanding, and some tools so that you can build your own mental health toolbox. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am so excited to have one of my dear friends, Helenna Santos, on the podcast today. We talk a lot about identity, about how our relationship to being an actor and a creative changes throughout our lives, especially when big monumental things happen to our lives and our desires and our perspectives about things shift. I really wanted to have her on this week because it's kind of a companion episode to last week's episode about passion and hobbies and how not every passion has to become a profession. And I think that as we are, potentially coming out of this strike today, as we're recording, it's 111 days into the strike. And maybe by the time this episode airs, the strike will be over. But I think that it's so important for us to identify how this strike maybe has made us feel, how it has potentially shifted our understanding of ourselves and our relationship to the industry, to our creative passions. And how that might have evolved over the past few months and in the future. I think that it's so important to have an understanding of our identity and how that relates to our creative self, but also to have an understanding of other aspects of our identity and how sometimes those aspects kind of take over and maybe more something that we need to focus on at that moment, and how that's okay. Like, it's okay for us to shift perspectives and to have an ebb and flow as far as the relationship that we have to our career and to this business. And it's just such a reminder that if being creative, being a creative, being an actor, being a filmmaker, whatever you are, if that is a part of you, it's always going to be a part of you. So you can continue, living your life, continue striving for success and happiness and other things. And this industry will always be there. So without further ado, let's jump into this really wonderful conversation with Helenna. Hi, Helenna. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm good. How are you? It's so nice to see your face.
I know, it's so good to see you.
And I can't wait to see you in person tomorrow.
It's true. How are you doing? How's the weather up in Canada? How is that, landing on your soul? What's going on?
The weather today is very overcast, which always sucks. um, it's okay though. I think I'm more used to it than I was, when we moved back up here. Like 10 years in LA of beautiful, beautiful weather, and then suddenly back in torrential downpour, fall, dark, dark winter. It takes a lot out of you, but I'm getting more used to it. I try to wear like fun, bright things, or I mean, this isn't bright, but like fun stuff or brighter colors or like just something so it doesn't feel so drab,
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. I mean, we have a mutual friend who's also been on the podcast who moved up to Vancouver to shoot a show.
mhm.
And it was interesting talking with her about that because it was like, the first couple months it was like, yay, rain, this is great. And then it kind of hits you
Yeah.
like just how much it affects your health.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's basically like Seattle, but worse. So, yeah, it's nice and cozy for a little bit. And then it just gets to be really depressing.
Yeah. Yeah, for
So,
sure. Well, let's rewind for a second. So you are from Vancouver. Well, you're originally from the US, but then you grew up in Vancouver and then you spent many, many years in LA.
yeah.
And And so I just want to start with that as far as like the decision to move to LA, and how what you liked, didn't like about moving cities, and so many people transition in their lives when they move to a big city, especially when they're creative and are following their passions and their dreams and all of those sorts of things. And how was that for you?
I mean, it was awesome. I have to recognize that, I moved down with Barry with my husband. So I wasn't coming down there alone. First of all, I had some family in California. I had a friend who had just moved there from Vancouver at the time. And so I had like a tiny mini support system that I think was really important. And, I of course had the vibe that everybody has when they move to LA, being like, "This is it. This is gonna be amazing." And so, coming down there with that energy was amazing and fantastic, but at the same time, you quickly realize that being a big fish in a small pond is a lot better sometimes than the other way around, you know? So, I don't know, I mean, we met because of community, and I'm such a people person, and I really until recently, actually, like, with age, I always got so much energy from being around other people, so I really quickly got involved in different communities. So whether it was, like, I waited tables at numerous restaurants, love the service industry, love the community that's there, and so many people are in entertainment in different capacities, so that was incredible, and then meeting people through that job, and then acting classes or groups that get together, whatever, creating your own community. The new media landscape was brand new at the time, and people were like, "Wow, what's a web series?" So, it was this time that was really great for people who have a lot of passions and love community. So I just sort of dove into it that way. Um, yeah, I kind of like brought Barry along with me and was like, "We're going to all these things."
Hmm. That's
So
great.
so yeah, it was good. It was good at the time.
Yeah, and then flash forward, how many years did you spend in LA?
10 years.
10 years. So
Yeah.
flash forward 10 years, and then you move back
Yeah.
to Vancouver, or
Yeah,
to Langley, outside,
just outside of Vancouver.
just outside
We
of
c
Vancouver.
we call it the other LA because so much is shot out here, and also, like, some of the police cars on the top say LA because of Langley. It's so funny, so we just call it the other LA.
So the other LA, you moved to the
Yeah.
other LA.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason especially why I wanted to have you on, and specifically right now, is because we're recording this when the SAG-AFTRA strike is still going. And it's been going on for 111 days today, actually.
It's crazy.
And so with all of these, like, our careers are so impacted by so many other people. It's not something we do in a bubble, and it's not something that we can just I mean, we can do it alone in some capacity, but this is such a community experience. And so when our community is impacted by others in the community, like the WGA strike and now the SAG-AFTRA strike, it really impacts our lives.
Mm.
And so, so many people right now I know are moving home, have decided to, pick up different careers or whatever. And it feels very similar to the pandemic, where it
Mm.
seemed like everything was like a pretty big stop, and people have to reflect on where they are, where they want to be, and how that might change their career. And so, 10 years in, um, you moved back to Langley, not because necessarily you wanted to stop acting,
No, not at all.
but because of some personal stuff, which you're welcome to, share. And so I just want you to walk through like that decision making process, and how it felt to move.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of factors that, just sort of all encapsulated in us moving back up here. When we originally wanted to move back up here, um, my grandma it looked like she would pass soon. And very luckily, my mom and I inherited her house. And so we were trying to figure out what we would do with the house. It was kind of like the primary driving force. So we were thinking maybe we'll fix it up, maybe we'll sell it, we don't know what we're going to do. But, you know, tangentially at the same time, we were so burnt out from Los Angeles. And it's ironic because it's like I never wanted to move back to Langley. for reference for people, it's 15 minutes from the US border, 45 to an hour from Vancouver without traffic. Um, Lots of hallmarks are shot out here. So when yeah, when we decided to move, it was kind of like we needed a stop from the intense hustle culture that is Los Angeles, and it is impossible to not be in it when you're there. It's very weird now visiting it, like, constantly because I consider it my second home. Um, it's it's so difficult to remove yourself from it. It's just something that permeates the culture. And in one way, I absolutely love it because that's what, that's why we met. It's why Ms. in the Biz was created. It's so many like opportunities. It's why we produced a film together. It's like so many things that come out of that that are incredible that don't exist in the same way here, or I'm sure as in other minor markets to the
Mhm.
States. But I also don't know if it's because I'm in the countryside sort of, that I really removed myself from that, and it took a long time to acclimate. Like, it really did. It took a long time for me to get the need for that sort of perfectionistic, I've gotta do all these things, like, you and Jessica Martin talking about, like, you checked off all of these boxes for an acting career, and, like, why isn't it happening the way that, like, it should, quote, unquote, happen? And even up here, I tried to do some of the marketing and branding stuff that is we used to do in LA all the time. Let's send our postcards. This is obviously pre-pandemic. This is 2017. And it just didn't land the same way here. No one really cared. It's just a different beast, or not even a beast up here. It's more just like it's just a different industry. And I kind of was like, whoa, all these things that used to make me feel productive, like
Mhm.
I was doing this career, whether or not I was booking or not, just didn't even fly in any
Right.
way. So that was a fascinating kind of realization.
Mhm.
I don't
D
know.
do you feel like your identity as an actor has changed in or as, as a creative in general between LA Helena actor versus, Vancouver actor Helena?
Um, that's a good question. I don't think so. Like, I'm
Mm.
pretty much the same person. I think
Yeah.
the way I go about the industry and my career and what I see as sort of my life trajectory as a human and as a creative is different. Because before, I think it's just, again, permeating in the culture. Like, it's a constant see and be seen. Who's doing this? Who's doing that? What are you doing next? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, great. You're awesome. And like, you're awesome too. Let's work together. But also, like, oh, you don't have, like, last time I was there, a mutual friend of ours asked, like, so what are you doing next? What's your filmmaking thing? Blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, it's like, bring it on down. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I'm gonna audition. I'm gonna book some stuff. I'm gonna do some photography. I was like, I don't know. And that's not something that, I mean, it took me a long time. There was like 6 months where I was like, oh, what's my next project gonna be? And I
Right.
was like, I didn't have a goal. And I'm someone who's always been so goal oriented and had to check off the boxes.
Mhm.
And now I think moving up here, being really lucky that I have great reps that I trust here, having booked a bunch here and I have a good foothold, but not expecting some huge career changing thing that's gonna, like, everyone is waiting. It feels like so a lot of people are waiting for that, like, oh, this one thing will happen and then my career will take off. Well, probably not.
Mhm.
Like, probably you're just gonna end up being a career actor
Right.
in whatever capacity. And I think moving up here made me finally, like, not only okay with that, but really appreciative of that. And that's something that I'm always talking to people up here about too, because they don't understand the type of hustle that it takes in Los Angeles.
Right.
The LA versus here. Again, I don't know if this is the pandemic, age, being in the country, not being around the culture as much, but I don't feel the need to be seen in the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm able to validate the artistry that I have in myself, like, on my own, and that took a long time. I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of us, because of the nature of the business, we're constantly um looking for outside approval because that's what it is.
Mhm.
Like whether you're in an acting class, like for me, say 15 years ago, it'd be like, oh, am I doing it right? Does the teacher think this is good? As opposed to like just am I doing the scene in the most honest way possible?
Right.
Like it's just I don't know, my everything has sort of changed for me. But,
Yeah.
I'm 43 this year. It's it's taken a long time to get here.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
does that answer your question?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think, it's interesting to hear you say that, like, you don't feel like you've changed. And I mean, I agree that at your core you haven't, but I
Yeah, that's
do
what I
think,
mean, yeah.
that, like, your energy is so different, what, you prioritize is so different, and that's so led 100% by your environment and
That's so interesting.
expectations.
I think, you know what, when you say that, that's so interesting because it's like, yeah, it's the core of me that feels the same. Like
Yeah.
I don't feel like a different person and artist, but what I have done that I think also is why I feel like I haven't changed is because like I feel like I'm back to who I was when I was 13 years old, just making art and enjoying art and
Mm.
being a part of something and not having any sort of attachment to the result.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. And my friend Rosalind, who's an opera singer, and I, we talk about that a lot. And again, it's like, I don't know if that's age or just experience or, I mean, all of it. It has to be all of it
Yep.
together, right?
For sure.
Um,
Did you listen to the episode with Laverne McKinnon about the grief coach thing? Like, it's
yeah.
so interesting because I feel like you naturally did what she teaches people to do, which is like, you know, because I mean, I remember when you first moved back, like there is a little bit of a mourning period as far as like separation from the idea of what you were, going to be. And I think,
Mhm.
just for the record, like, neither of us are saying that Helena couldn't book something tomorrow, well, if the strike was ended, that, that would completely change your life. I think that
Oh,
that's
sure.
still
Sure.
that's still a possibility in whatever capacity, but I think that it is so important. It's just having the understanding and the separation from those results to be like, I'm super good with where I'm at now. And
Yeah.
if things change, that's cool. If they don't, that's also cool. I'm also like, I'm still a creative and I'm still doing my thing no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I don't I'm lucky enough that there are still some Canadian projects, a few
Yeah.
that I've been auditioning for up here, and yeah, if I book something tomorrow that changed my life or career, amazing, great.
Right.
But if it doesn't, I don't need it to in the
Right.
same way that I really I needed, I don't know. I feel like it's the whole sunk cost fallacy that, we
Mhm.
talk about a lot and I think it's really important that creative people in any capacity, like, we realize that any energy we put into this, it only helps. Like, there's no you become a better person all around,
Yeah.
no matter what you're doing and however you are creatively fulfilled. And I think the other thing too that's changed a lot for me, and I think maybe also in the LA culture, like the industry culture at large, is that, people are not realizing that they can, like, it's important to do things that isn't you're not just an actor. You know what I mean? I don't want to say just an actor as if it's like a flippant thing I'm saying. It's like you can focus on other things and it's okay.
Right.
Like a lot of times people who go into acting and do want to check off all the boxes and advance their career and do all the things that we're told that you should do, like a piece of you gets lost. And I don't know. I just that makes me sad, like I wish that everybody was just constantly encouraged to, like, almost feels weird to say, but like not market yourself, not
Mm.
brand, like brand with a capital B yourself, especially, now whatever I have, I'm oddly in this like weird place about like tech and digital life and social media and stuff. But it's like if we could put that all aside and just really focus on who you are, what you love, what makes you an artist, and then your art is better.
Yeah.
Like it's just way better. If you live your life, it's inevitably you have much more to give,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah, jumping to what you were just talking about with social media and everything, like you are one of the most self-aware people that I know, I feel like,
Huh.
as far as like
Wow, thank
your
you. Thanks, therapy. Many years of
Yeah,
therapy.
I know, right? Shout out to
I mean,
therapy.
shout out to
Uh,
therapy, truly.
yeah. Um, I mean, just as far as your understanding of like how things impact you.
Mm.
And I think that this is very much, like again about the shift between LA Helena versus second LA Helena. But just I think that, we've been talking about, yeah, a huge shift in just like social media culture, how much it influences the way that we, of course, think about ourselves and all those sorts of things.
Mhm.
And I think that, like, from many people that I would talk to about that, I feel like you're someone who actually implements and actually is constantly working on ways to improve your mindset and your mental health. Like, I think it's really inspirational to me how much you set boundaries for yourself
Mm.
and really stick by them because you know that those are the things that are going to make you feel better or worse on a daily basis.
Oh, wow, thanks. That's aw. You make me
So
cry.
so what I mean, first of all, I would love to hear about your like morning routine that I know that you do that is like like non-negotiable for you. And
Oh,
then
funny. It's so
and
funny
then
though, because that's changed so much too.
for sure.
Like, the pandemic started and you and I were like doing yoga. We're like, again, we're checking off lists, right?
Right.
So we were, checking off boxes and we're like doing the stuff. So I've definitely changed since then too. It's weird. Like I feel like I'm so anti doing the stuff that I feel like everyone else is doing it. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, I mean, like I've always had a little counterculture rebel in me, but there's something then like I do it against myself. So I'm like, I used to have to check off this morning thing that I always did just because that would like make me feel good and productive because the pandemic had us doing nothing and feeling awful.
Yep.
But now in the mornings, I just read. Like
Yep.
and for me that is non-negotiable. Because I just love reading fiction.
Mhm.
So I have my good old Kindle and I just read.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's kind of the only morning thing I do now.
Yeah. And how has your like self-awareness and boundary setting and all of that um how is that now permeating into your relationship with social media?
Oh, wow. Um, oh gosh, I don't know specifically that's sort of like an intense question and trying to like unpack the layers of it because there's so many layers of it. Like this
Right.
is, when okay, I'm gonna like rewind a little bit to
Yeah.
like, when we moved down to LA, Facebook had kind of just started. It was 2007. People were like getting on Facebook. And then it was like Twitter. And then again, like the web world. And, we're part of the International Academy of Web Television and like meeting all these people who like were multi hyphenates and digital creatives. And then I worked at a PR company with a friend of mine and we had to market like it was all about marketing and branding. And then I took this like marketing and branding class because actors had to do that back then. And it was like a real thing. And um, then I ran Ms. in the Biz for
Mm,
7 years. And that was all created with the help of social media. Like
right.
truly, like that's how we created our community. That's how people found out about it. And so and I've been like so on I did a show on YouTube show for like back in 2008 for a year and I posted every single day on Tuesdays. There were 5 creatives in different fields and I was Tuesday and the actor in LA and or one of the actors in LA. And so I was vlogging really early on. Don't mind my dog if you can hear the barks. Um, and so I was like really in it, really, really in it, and like best practices and blah, blah, blah. And then I was, consulting for people about their social media. And I think I just like really overdid it.
Mhm.
In the fact that like it's just like a lot. And so it felt really important at the time. And also because like LA culture at the time was really like get yourself out there, be seen, do stuff. Like this is how you brand yourself. This is how people hire you. And so I was like, oh, this is how we get hired. Great. And then coming here and realizing that nobody gave a shit
Mm.
about any social media stuff. Like
Right.
literally some of the people who work the most up here on huge American shows have very little social media presence.
Mhm.
And I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
Mhm.
Because the truth of the matter is, and again, LA is a different thing. So with LA, the independent film community that I am a part of, like, it's so much of it is relationship based, and a lot of it is like Instagram or
Right.
Twitter/X or now Threads or whatever. And that's sort of how we keep that going in the indie film world. But for like traditional network television streaming, almost none of the things that I booked have been because of a social media presence.
Right.
And that took me a minute to be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that doesn't actually matter as much as we think it does."
Right.
Interesting. And then all of these documentaries started to come out, like The Social Dilemma and what's it called? Fake something. The one about influencers and
Yeah.
influencer
On
culture.
HBO.
Yeah. Um, and I started to be like, oh, like, snap, this is like, what are we doing to our brains? And
Right.
then, of course, like body image and all of those issues and comparison to other people and their lives and careers and just all of the stuff. And I started to do a lot of reading and a lot of research. And I started to think a lot about my own relationship over the years with social media and the digital landscape and how it's affected me.
Yep.
And so sorry, this is a really long really long explanation, but
No.
I'm now at the point where I feel like I'm I'm grieving the innocence of what social media was when it all began and before
Mhm.
it was all about ads and people really selling themselves, and like for the fact that like someone who is not in entertainment to have to feel like they have to be a brand really bothers me,
Yep.
that we're constantly being influenced and sold things, and it just it hurts. It hurts like what's happened to us. And
Mhm.
I was talking to somebody the other day about how it'll be interesting to see. I think they're calling it Generation Alpha now, like the
Mhm.
kids. So like are they, if we go backwards, it's like our sorry, I should say our the Gen X millennial people
Mhm.
look at smoking as like this awful thing and people smoked at the time and it's just normal. And now Gen Z looks at drinking as like, oh my God, that's like smoking. That's awful. Like
Right.
the amount of drinking that people do in culture.
Right.
And then I'm wondering if social media is going to be this thing that Generation Alpha goes like, wow, you guys had a problem. Like
Mhm.
this is, we're sick.
Right.
Um, and so anyways, like and how it's just whatever if we so many things, the elections, the pandemic, everything that's happening overseas now, like it just all of it has really put a rift in our society. And I'm someone, like I just love humans, and
Mhm.
I love community and connection, and I just feel like it's really really tearing us apart.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I want to navigate all that, how I want to fit into that, other than like dialing things back is what's been important for me. Like I completely deleted my Twitter account.
Mhm.
I really only go on Instagram because I love it as like a platform, but I get so many ads. It's
Mhm.
obscene. Like my girlfriend Sarah up here, she's like, I don't get that many ads. I'm like, why am I an account where they give me all these ads? And literally, I was showing her, it's like, I don't know about you, but it's every third story
Hmm.
there's an ad. And then
Yeah.
every second post, there's a sponsored post. And I'm like, I just want to go back to the days when I wish I could pay $50 a month or something to just use Instagram and choose to have no ads and just see
Yep.
the accounts that I love. Yeah, like Facebook, I only have because of, old school friends and
Mhm.
older, like old school as in back in the day, and then like older as in like, family and
Right.
people who are old.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, that's been important for me. I put, Instagram and a whole other page of my phone in a folder so
Mhm.
that it's not, I have a time limit
Reflex.
on it. Yeah, but although, like I always like 15 more minutes, 15 more
Right.
minutes. But you've done something similar, like with Instagram and stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think, that's one of the things I was gonna say as a takeaway is the fact that it's so dependent on being self-aware, and, like, I think that
Mm,
that's something that I advocate for on this podcast, like, over and over and over again is, like, self-awareness when it comes to your mental health and, like, how, standing up for yourself and whether that's with a therapist or whether that's with other medical professionals, like, or your friends or your community, like, standing up for yourself, and then having the self-awareness about what affects you and how it affects you. Because I
mhm.
know that, like, for me, I still certainly feel the pull and the need to have a, strong social media presence in whatever that means, being in LA. I certainly still feel that. I also don't stress about it anymore. Like I have an awareness of it and yet
Yeah.
I've really let go of feeling stressed about it. And so like I know and probably part of it is that, my side job, my job is that I do that for so many other brands. Like I do
Mhm.
marketing and social media. And so like I'm constantly on social media for them and to help them maintain whatever they're doing. Um, and I think for me, I'm just really like, I will put things out there and not stress about how someone is going to relate to it or not. Um, and also, with everything going on, in the Middle East and with everything going on in the world, I can also like feel myself like whenever I'm feeling like it's getting too much and I need to step away, then I can feel that within seconds and I step away and
Mm,
have I recognize that social media is both a tool and a weapon
yeah.
and depending upon how it's being used that day and how I'm interpreting it that day will then be dependent upon my relationship with it that day. Um and I think that that's been something that's been just hugely important for me. Um, and it's interesting because I also feel that I'm not I'm not as influenced now by the idea of people's ideal lives, like
Mm.
people posting and being on a beach or being on a private jet or any of that kind of stuff like that celebrity stuff like
Who cares?
that doesn't do anything for me anymore like it
Yeah.
used to like be like oh man I wish that was me and now I'm just like I just don't care um I think my only like wistful scrolling will be when I'm like deep in work and I've got like friends that are like, whatever, traveling some gorgeous place that I've never been. And I'm like, dang it, why am I, not working right now? But I feel like it's something that like it's come to me over time and it's come to me to be something that I again now know exactly how that's going to show up in my body and then can
Mhm.
react to it because
Mm,
I don't want uh to have that just like negativity in my space all the time. Like I'm very protective of what enters my brain space. And so that's something that I've become hyper aware of and then will put up boundaries when I need to and when I don't, then I just kind of
mhm,
let it fly free. Um, but I also understand that not everyone has that ability to set up boundaries immediately when they need to, and some people need to just like have very strict boundaries. Um, from the get-go.
yeah.
And I think that that's also what makes us that's, what's so interesting. It's like when they say that people have addictive personalities, and that's something where it's like if someone has addiction in their family or if they've struggled with addiction, it is something where, um, research and everything shows that like someone might be addicted to one thing, and then when they start giving that up, they then choose something else to then be addicted to. And so again, I think it's something where it's like understanding how you are and how you relate to things,
Mhm.
and knowing that about yourself so that you can then protect yourself in the future.
Yeah, I mean, and that's such a process. Like,
Yeah.
it's that's a lot of self-work,
Yeah.
that I mean, aside from like therapy, I don't
Right.
know how someone I guess just like starting to know that you need to be aware
Yeah.
is even important. Which
Totally.
is what I think what these documentaries and a lot of books and a lot of the reading that I've done so far have really I think it's good that they're out there now that people know to at least check themselves,
Right.
in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back really quick. So you moved back up to Langley to help with your grandmother's house.
Mhm.
And then we have pandemic. And then your mother has recently been sick. And so
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that because like once again, you are having to redefine your relationship with your career and your creative self, because
Mhm.
you needed to kind of put all of that on hold in order to focus on helping your mom get well. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious, how that process was.
That's so I even forgot. Yeah, so I stopped auditioning for like 6 or 8 months, I can't
Hmm.
remember.
Yeah.
That's when I cut all my hair off too.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, gosh, it feels like a lifetime ago and it was only last year.
Yeah.
Like, that's just crazy. Um, yeah, so I have my parents are elderly. My dad is 91, my mom is 76 and went through a bunch of chemo and radiation last year and um so I became and still am in many ways like my day job is helping them really,
Hmm.
aside from acting when I book stuff and photography and all the shoots I do and stuff like that. But they're my top priority. I I didn't have a problem choosing to step away from auditioning for a while because I knew that I'd always be back.
Hmm.
Um, that it's just part of again, it's like it's the knowing that this career and life and in entertainment or as a creative is not linear, so it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Like this is my parents' health, they're being taken care of is the top priority and everything I like my the groundwork for the longevity of my career is always going to be there because
Right.
I put in the work.
Yeah.
Um and I have to like always kind of put that piece out there that it's like I did the work.
Right.
So I can now feel confident that it's not all going to go away.
Right.
Um but also knowing that it's just like this career is so random that
Hmm.
again, it's nonlinear. So
Right.
it doesn't matter. And I also have very supportive reps and they a number of them, I think all of my reps up here have had someone in their life who had cancer and like and immediately when I said that I needed to take some time, they're like, no, go. Like, yeah, just let us know when you want to start auditioning again. And I was like,
Right.
great. And I know that if I was in LA, I probably would have been terrified to have that conversation.
Yeah.
It's just it's just a different experience down there.
But I also think, I mean, even though, yes, I agree that you did the work and you've got the reps and therefore you could step back in,
Hmm.
I would argue that even if that wasn't the case, because if anyone's listening and they're like, "Oh no, but I don't have that," it's like,
Right, right.
it doesn't matter because the things that matter are the family and the connections and all of those things. And like,
Yeah.
even if you, um, it's so interesting because like I started acting again when I was 28. And so like
Hmm.
I had started I went to school for it, and then I moved to Australia, and I lived in Australia, and so then me coming into acting again, I was, yeah, like 27, 28, and everyone was like, "It's too old, it's whatever," like all these things, and like, sure, potentially there is, and obviously I'm not at the end of my career, so like, who knows how this is gonna continue to evolve, but it was something where it was like, it doesn't matter, like, wherever you show up, um, is where you are, and, like, if you need to take time off, or if someone's listening and they're like, "I'm at home on in the strike, and, like, I really am enjoying being with my family, and I don't wanna go back to LA yet," like, that's perfectly okay, like, it's
Yeah,
okay to
100%.
take steps away, and, they say, like, the industry is always gonna be here, like, it is. It may be
Mhm.
completely different from the industry that you left, like, that for sure, the industry is always evolving,
Yeah.
but I think that we need to take away this, like, pressure of feeling like you're wasting time by
Oh,
doing something
100%.
that's important to you.
And not only that, but all of that stuff, whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're going on vacation, whether you're like you and you're doing construction in Australia,
Mhm.
or, taking care of family, or whatever, you want to go and be an architect for 2 months, or 2 months, that'd be really 2 years. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, whatever you're going to do is just going to make your creative life more full.
Yeah,
That's like hands down.
yeah.
So like, yeah, like I didn't mean to, thank you for sort of flagging that, because I didn't mean to say that anyone needs to have like done specific things, because we all know that that's not true, right?
Right,
Or have great reps. You don't. That's just my situation. I
right.
don't at all mean that for anyone else. Um, but yeah, anything that you can do that just makes your life better
Mhm.
is going to make you a better creative
Yeah.
in whatever thing it is that you're doing. So I think about like the strike right now and the community that's been created because of the strike.
Mhm.
Like, that's incredible
Yeah.
to see people coming together, to see like writers who are meeting actors who they would never met because everyone's on the picket lines together, to
Yep.
like this solidarity and a strengthening of the creative community. And what's so cool is that it's really showing how important every single person is that makes a show,
Mhm.
like, or a movie or whatever.
Mhm.
Like, the person who walks in and says, "Hi, I'd like a table for 2," is just as important as, well, differently important
Yeah.
than the A-list celebrity,
Right.
and it's interesting to see also, or the perception is that a lot of the A-list type people are allowing everybody else to have this time to be like, "Yo, we matter."
Right.
Like, you can't make projects without the huge majority of people,
Right.
who aren't the top paid people in the
Yeah.
business. And that's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it makes, I don't know. I mean, we'll see when we all go back to set. Like, I hope that this time brings people together and it makes like the divide between number 1 in the call sheet and 15
Yep.
less,
Mhm.
you know? I hope.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Maybe.
And I wanna jump now to, that you've discovered this whole other passion, which you've always had, as a photographer. You've
Because
always
I
been
used to
amazing.
make you take photos with my iPhone. I'm like, "Deb, stand there. Do
Yeah,
this."
exactly. That's always been, something that you've done, and now you've, evolved this into another side business,
Mhm.
which is incredible, and anyone listening, you should definitely shoot with Helena, she's amazing.
Aw.
Um, but I'd like to talk about, like, how you've evolved that, your creative self in one aspect and, like, changed that and morphed that into this new creative aspect of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it totally happened by accident. You know, the pandemic happened and I was like, "Well, what are we doing? I need to, like, do something creative."
Yeah.
And, Barry had, like, a old DSLR, and I just started to play around with it, and I was like, "Hmm, this is interesting." And I took a intro to DSLR camera class just so I could learn, like, what the heck all these buttons did. And then I just sort of was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, like, how have I never thought of this before?
Mhm.
I know one of my best friends up here and her husband are professional photographers. My half brother is a photographer in the Philippines. I have a niece who is a photographer. I just like never thought about it because it was
Yeah.
always about acting, filmmaking. It's like I'm going to produce this thing or whatever. And then suddenly I went like, oh wait, I get to like essentially produce something.
Mhm.
I get to art direct it. I get to like wardrobe. I get to set deck it. I get to edit it. I get to be collaborative, work with the person. I get to help direct the person. Get to make like an entire little short film, and I don't have to look for funding, and I don't have to have it distributed out into the world somehow and make pennies for, the time that I've spent. And it's like these little balls of creative collaboration, and then it goes out into the ether,
Yeah.
and I just get to make art. And I think that's just what happened. I was just like, "Whoa, I get to make art." And so I started shooting with friends up here, and I upgraded all my camera gear, and I was telling Barry, my husband, I was like, "Yeah, I feel like I could do this. I feel like this
Mhm.
could be like a side business, like this,
Yeah.
a tangential career, like hand in hand." Because it really feels the same to me as everything else. Like
Yeah.
it feels like I'm producing, it feels like I'm writing, it feels like I'm acting, it feels like I'm directing a thing. Like it just all kind of comes together. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like I can't, and it's weird too. I was trying to explain this to somebody. I'm like, I understand that I'm the person taking the photo and like editing it and stuff. But like to me, it's more about the person that I'm taking the picture of. And so like when I shoot with them, like we do a whole questionnaire and we do a whole like FaceTime and we really talk about like making something specific to them. And I only shoot like with natural light outside right now, mostly outside, sometimes inside, depending. But it's because like of the tactile nature of environments that I think
Yeah.
is so cool. And so it's just like, I don't know. I really love seeing like people in in a way that feels super authentic to them.
Yeah.
It's really exciting to me, and so it actually kind of scratches the same itch that acting does for
Mhm.
me. It in that like that creative moment,
Yep.
it really just I don't know. I'm just super grateful that I decided to pick up a camera one day,
Yeah.
um, and like learn how to use it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it again goes back to this idea of like identity and like you're just like at your core, you're just like a very creative person.
Yeah.
And so I think that like it makes sense that that would like your creativity was currently at a stop because of
Mhm.
pandemic and so it like had to seep out in some other way and
Well, it's funny because I at the time too, I had put out my poetry book that I was like, "Well, I better do something." So I had
right.
put my book together that was like some of the work was stuff that I did in high school.
Mhm.
And then to bridge, I like bridged this whole span of whatever, a coming of age story. And
Mhm.
um but to me, like poems are like little short films, which are like photographs.
Yeah.
And it just all feels the same to me. And
Yeah.
again, like going back to various top of our conversation, I just feel like I'm back to who I was when I was 13 years old making stuff for
Yeah.
fun. And that was it. Like
Yep.
there was no expectation and there was no need to like validate anything or be doing it right or well.
Yeah.
Um yeah, and, for anybody out there who's like, I wanted to do something and I haven't done it yet." Like, I think for me, it was I took a lot of joy in not having to be good.
Mm.
That was really important. Like, when I started, I was like, "I don't know, maybe I'll suck at this." Like, I
Yep.
have no idea because it's
Yep.
freaking hard. Like, every day I'm like, "Why is this photo blurry? What is going on? What did I do wrong?" But at the beginning, I just let myself totally just not be good. I was
Yeah.
like, "Try to not be good.
Yep.
Just don't worry about it."
Yep.
So that was really, really fun after
Yeah.
being, somewhat of a lifelong perfectionist.
Yeah.
That was
That's
great.
That's really interesting because I was just at Austin Film Festival this weekend, and that was the thing that I would say on every single panel I listened to, that was what most of the, like, big writers said
Yeah.
was like, "Dare to be bad."
Mhm.
Because if you're being bad, like, if you're bad, it means that you're at least trying.
Yeah.
And so many people won't even jump in because of that, perfectionist thing, and that's something that, as I've started to write, has definitely been a struggle for me because my my life partner and my writing partner, like, he's so good. Like, he's such an just excellent writer. And
Mhm.
so then when I write and then he will rewrite something that I've written and I'm like, "Oh, it's so much better what you did." And he's like, "Yeah, but I wouldn't have gotten to where I got if I didn't have the foundation of what you wrote before." And I
Yeah.
think that it's so important to remind ourselves of that, and again, to remind ourselves of the fact that, like, at your core, if you're going to be, like, creative and, like, this is, who you are, if that's part of your identity, like, you just gotta keep trying all of these other things, and yeah, dare to be bad because
Mhm.
then those, um, you know, it'll get better, like, you will learn, you will grow, um, as you continue to evolve. That's
Yeah, and not worrying about where the final product, and I'm air quoting that,
yes,
where what that'll be or where it ends up,
right.
because goals are important,
Yeah.
but, having a stronghold on
Mhm.
something, it does the exact opposite to everything. And
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this before, but for auditions, that has totally shifted for me too. Like since I just mainly auditioning, oh, well, really, except for commercials, like only auditioning from home, it's been incredible
Yeah.
for me. I love it because it's like I don't feel like I have to give a perfect performance when I go into
Right.
an audition room in the same way that I felt that pressure before.
Yeah.
And I'm way freer. And I honestly do one or two takes of something and I let it go.
Mhm.
Because I know for me, the more I do it, the more stale it's going to be. And then
Yeah.
my brain starts working too hard and
Yep.
I start to doubt my choices. I start to want to do it right as opposed to doing it authentically.
Yep.
And I think, yeah, that goes for any art, whether it's writing or photography or, composing, whatever.
Right.
Although, I mean, I don't know a lot about composing, but I would assume that,
Yes.
well, that's a different beast. Let's not assume anything.
Yeah. Well, but I think that that's the case in, like, anything that we do, you
Mhm.
know? And it's like, that like, when you first learn to drive, you aren't expecting to be, like, a perfect driver right off the bat. Like, that's why you start driving in a parking lot because
Yeah.
you're like, "Okay, I'm like, there's no one around me. I can't kill anyone. I can't crash into anything. I'm gonna, like, be in a space where I will certainly fail, and that will be okay," you know?
Mhm.
Um, and so it's just about, like, setting yourself up and then giving yourself the time to learn and to grow in order to be better, um, which I think is so valuable.
Mhm.
Um, so I have so many other things I wanna ask you about, but I like to keep these, to an hour. So,
Yeah.
one thing I'm gonna say is that, one of our previous, guests, Courtney, talked a lot about her OCD, and that's something I,
Mm.
really wanted to dive into with you as well, but I think that I'm gonna, table that for I wanna have a three-way conversation with the 3 of us.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Um, because I think that, something that I, really, felt with Courtney's is, like, me knowing you as a friend, and I know, some about how your OCD comes up for you, and then listening to her, I was like, it's just so interesting that it's, like, it's the same thing, but it shows up in people's lives in completely different ways.
Mhm.
Um,
Especially creatives too.
yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Because
So
there are ways that it manifests, like, in everyday life, and then
yeah,
there are ways that it manifests in creative work
yeah.
or yeah, that's
Ye
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanna have a future conversation about that, but, just as a, little preview thing, yeah, I'd love to hear just, like, how it manifests for you. Um, y
Oh, well, okay, drugs are good. So
yeah,
I just started drugs
great.
for OCD, in top of pandemic kind of because I was like, "Whoa, I can't handle my like this is all too much going on and I think I need help." But I was diagnosed with OCD when I was 13 And I always, my my doctor at the time, he was our family doctor, and he's like, "Well, she's just really creative, and it's gonna be okay if it doesn't get in the way of her life, then she just doesn't need to go on drugs." So for so many years, I just lived with a level of anxiety that now that I don't have that, and this is also part of like how I've changed, being
Mhm.
here too in this environment, like, I always say it's like this backpack that I didn't know that I could take off.
Mhm.
And it's like always gonna be there, but it's just like I don't have to carry this weight all the time.
Yeah.
And things are so much easier. And I'm not responsible for like making myself like be okay. Um, so I mean, it used to literally manifest for me like in, once a month or something. I would feel, I don't even know if I've ever told you this. I would feel like I had hit somebody when I was driving,
Mm.
and I would have to drive around the block to make sure I hadn't hit them, even though I knew I hadn't hit them.
Right.
Like, it was when my OCD was that bad, that's usually what it would get to that point and then be like, "Whoa, okay, you got it." Like something, it was always about like harming someone else was really what I was like my worries.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, the same thing would happen at restaurants when I was working in restaurants. Like if someone broke a glass in, to say, the well where all the ice is,
Mhm.
and I like they were sort of haphazardly cleaning it up or something, I was like, "Nuh-uh, like, we're not gonna kill somebody today, like, not on my
Right.
watch," or someone was overserved, or, my mind would be like, "Oh, they're overserved, and so therefore they're gonna, like, get in their car, and they're gonna drive, and they're gonna kill somebody, and it's gonna be, my fault," or whatever. Um, it was like the catastrophizing of stuff.
Right.
But as an artist, as an actor, when I was in college, um I was performing in a play, and I had a hardcore panic attack, and I could barely get through a scene. And I went to a therapist on campus for the first time I ever went to a therapist, and he just told me, "Oh, well, you're a normal 20-year-old, you're fine." And
Mm.
I was like, "This is really unhelpful." I knew it was something more. Um, and with like auditions and being on set specifically, before starting, like, and I'm a really low dose
Mhm.
of what I'm on, um, which is like sertraline, which is like Zoloft. And before that, I would go into auditions or being on set, and I'd constantly have a fear that I was gonna fuck up, that I was gonna, um, somehow like just it's just that whole thing that there's so many people like on sets. Oh, you say these 5 words right. There's so much pressure, ma. And so I couldn't even be present in my own body.
Mhm.
And I was so far in my head. Like when I was in theater school, I did this one project where it's like it was this board where I drew myself, and like everything was coming out of my head. Like all my worries, all my stuff. And I just was not present.
Mhm.
So for me, making the choice, and it was a difficult choice until I realized, like, "Oh my god, I should have done this a gajillion years ago,"
Yeah.
because I thought it was gonna change my personality. I thought it was
Mm.
gonna change who I was, and in fact, it just cleared the cobwebs, and it took off the backpack, and now I'm more present, more aware, more in tune with my emotions, and again, also, this is after a lot of years of therapy too. So, yeah, now with the drugs and stuff, like, once in a while, if there's like a lot of pressures, whether it be like the world, my parents, life, or well, we ran out of water, like Ella's sick, you know what I mean? Like when things start to pile up, suddenly I feel there's a specific anxiety demon that it is. And it's this like impulse that I cannot um control,
Right.
really. Like it's tampered down now. So
Yeah.
it's not as big. It's not as catastrophic. It's not
Yeah.
like the whole world's gonna blow up or I'm gonna kill
Right.
somebody accidentally. It's really just like, so it's usually something very minor that I can work through and talk myself through, as opposed to expecting myself to have to come up with like some way to bring myself down when it's a chemical imbalance in my brain, you know?
Right. And so what do you do? Like, what tools do you have in order to help talk yourself through things, um, if the meds are not sufficient in that moment?
Honestly, it's a lot of like breathing.
Mhm.
That's like, and it's the usual 5 senses things that people do, but, like, literally feeling my feet on the ground. What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you hear? What do like, I feel like that's taught to people so much, but, um, it's really super helpful
Yeah.
to just put yourself back in your body.
Yeah.
But then also sometimes I get to the point where I need outside confirmation. Like,
Right.
I'll ask Barry, "Hey, is this like it I don't know if I'm worried about like something random, like say food going bad in the fridge, and I'm for some reason that's the thing that my OCD little demon dude wants to latch onto.
Yep.
I just need somebody else to say, no, that's good. We can
Mhm.
eat it. We're not gonna die.
Right.
So sometimes I still do need that. But
Yeah.
more often than not, I'm okay. And now being on set, I'm I'm in a place where I don't I think I don't need to prove that I was right to be hired anymore.
Mhm.
And that for me has changed when I'm on set.
Yeah.
Because before it used to be like, oh, it could be anybody. Anybody could book this part. La, 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 like whatever, whatever it was. But like now I have the confidence in like why I'm there and who I am and being able to like do the job that question doesn't come up. So I don't know if that's a tool, but I sort of somehow negated one of the things that used to pick on my brain
Yeah.
that helps me be freer with
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking.
Yeah, thanks you. This is so fun, but I do want to ask, how are you? How are you feeling? How, I know this is the very end of our conversation, but I wanted to
No.
make sure that, you give so much to other people when you do this podcast. And, because you're hosting a podcast, you listen to other people talk, but I want to make sure that, all of us as listeners and friends and community, we're supporting you. Like, how are you?
You're so sweet. I was like, I'm gonna like transparency because that's what I like to focus on in this podcast. I'm doing okay. I think that again, social media, like I think the thing that has been the hardest for me, and for anyone listening, I'm Jewish, and so everything going on right now has been um deeply personal and very difficult. And I think the thing that has been the biggest takeaway for me is learning who I can count on for different things. I
Mm,
think that, something that I used to talk to my therapist about is like you're at the center and then you have circles outside of yourself and those circles um have your friends in them or your family or like your community in some capacity. And people can jump from those rings depending upon your current experience with them or whatever. And obviously, the closer you are in the circle, the more that you can like trust and confide in someone and all of that kind of thing. And I think that I've also realized that not only do I have circles of friends, I also have buckets of friends because I think that there's some people who just can't handle what's going on in the
mhm,
world. And they, even though it's affecting me and I'm their friend, and therefore, by proxy, one would think that that should affect them, it might not. And that's something that I realized recently, which has honestly been a little bit difficult to be like, oh, this thing that's like really, really hard for me to be struggling with right now. I can't talk about it with some of my friends because they don't want to have this as part of their um space
mhm,
as something that they're thinking about. And so it's been, there's been memes and this is something that like I posted as well where it was like, you can see the people that like, if it was Nazi Germany that like you could go and like hide, like who are the people that would hide you?
mm,
And I think that, like, there's some truth in that, but also in me reflecting on the fact that, like, there is we're so aware of everything that's going on in the world right now and also not aware at the same time. And people can um decide to just like put their heads in their sand. And like while that's personally like that sucks, it also is something that like I just have to respect that that's just how some people are, and that I get other things from them. So it's, I mean, to be honest, it's been like every day, every hour, it like fluctuates how I'm feeling.
Mhm.
Um, but it's also honestly the last like month has been like the biggest learning experience for me as far as like both how I need to show up for myself and then also just like how other people in my community show up, and then having hard conversations with myself about like, okay, but is that person still someone I still want to be friends with? Well, yeah. So like um I can't blame them for like this being too much for them to take in, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
So so yeah, but I'm doing okay, and I think that like having these kinds of conversations are so helpful for me. Um and I hope also for the community, because I think that like I feel like amongst everything that's happening, we are still trying to further ourselves and our, careers and our art and our whatever. And like, it's always valuable for me to talk to people and be able to just get little reminders about why we're doing what we're doing and all of that. So
Mhm. Man, what a hard time.
it is.
Yeah.
It
Well, I
is.
am very grateful for you, and I know this
I'm grateful
community
for
is
you.
very, very grateful for you.
Thank you.
So, thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to Helena talk about the way that this career has shifted, the way that her identity as an artist has shifted, as well as, her conversations around taking care of ailing parents, around her journey with OCD and her relationship with social media. We covered so many topics, and I hope that you have walked away with some little nuggets potentially, some things that might help you with your identity and your relationship with social media, and maybe some new ideas about boundaries that you can potentially set up for yourself, because I think we all I'm such an advocate for boundaries and for ensuring that we are protecting ourselves. I think it's so, so, so important. I want to give a special thank you and shout out to my incredible friend and the editor of this podcast, Katra Parkman. I also want to give a special shout out to Ryan Ricks from Salt and Sea Studios for this incredible intro and outro music. I hope y'all are enjoying it as much as I am. As always, please rate and review and subscribe and all of these things. We really, really appreciate it. Please reach out to me on social media if this episode has resonated with you. And most importantly, please remember that you and everyone around you is more than you see. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to talking with you again next week.